last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Oops, I guess it works better if I turn on my microphone. Welcome back to another edition of Dark Matters Radio, heard exclusively on KGRA DB right here on this network. Well, our show is primarily geared, although we do hit other topics, but primarily geared to the question of UFOs, and today, because they couldn't keep their damn hands off of it, UFOs wasn't good enough, so there's a bunch out there now calling it UAPs. Same, doesn't matter. It's the same damn thing. Once upon a time, it was flying discs, then it was flying saucers, then it was those sons of bitches in the sky, but it's still the same thing. Now, I've been doing this beat for, 36, 37 years, pushing up quickly on 40 years on this topic. And I got to tell you, my opinion about it has changed over the years dramatically. Do I believe that there's something real there? Oh, yeah, beyond any doubt. I've had several sightings of the phenomenon myself, and I have no doubt that there's something there, something that I believe is intelligently controlled. In other words, there is a definite sentience behind it. Probably, more than likely, an alien sentience. Now, last week, as I do this show, today, as I do the show, it's November the 18th. Last week, roughly 5 days ago, there were more congressional hearings. Now, I knew those hearings were coming up, and I do have, that I've accumulated over the years, a vast library of books that go back to the 40s and the 50s, believe it or not. And the one book that I have some of the highest regard for because of who wrote it, the way it was written, and the topics covered was my now unfortunately deceased buddy, and he was a friend of mine, a fellow police officer, Mr. Lawrence Fawcett, and his co-author, Barry Greenwood. Back in '84, they had a book come out called Clear Intent. And this book was geared primarily toward military encounters, military incursions, and this is the scary part, incursions into areas with nuclear weapons, our nuclear deterrent, all right? In one case, an entire flight of 10 ICBMs was disabled. if World War III would have broken out, those birds would not have been able to fly as the UFO came into the area where they were housed. Now, ultimately, it ended up one, possibly two of those missiles had to be completely removed, disassembled, and replaced. All the targeting data that was installed in those missiles was changed. Now, there's not a hell of a lot more dealing with national security than something like that. And in these hearings, the ones this past week and prior, there may have been a passing reference to these situations, but that's it. Now, on Facebook, on my personal page, I wrote a short little op-ed piece on these hearings. And basically, what I said was that I felt they're horse shit. Road apples, okay? These are nothing more, in my opinion, this is strictly mine, than a dog and pony sex show, okay? Chewing up the public funds in holding these hearings. And what came out of it? Well, more blather, more blah, blah, blah. The UFOs are here. Yeah, they're flying around. Yeah, I've been told we've got material. Yeah, we may have biologics. Well, we used to call them bodies, all right? But I guess not so much anymore. Biologics. And the bottom line, well, I can't tell you in a public hearing. Maybe behind closed doors I can relay more information. Hey, been there, done that. Okay, been there and done that. Like I said, and I'll be blunt, horse shit. Now, tonight we have a returning guest. We had him on a few weeks ago. His name is Manny. He's got a very popular YouTube channel. And one of the reasons we originally brought him on was one of the primaries in these hearings is a guy by the name of Lue Elizondo. Lue was back along with some others. And our guest paid very close attention, got some video and audio clips he wants to play on tonight's show. And I'm looking forward to that. But the bottom line from my standpoint, and this is only my standpoint, I fervently believe we will never get to the bottom of this because, as I've stated on this show and in a paper I wrote a number of months ago, disclosure is simply a pipe dream for the true and the faithful believers in this phenomena that think that at some point the government is going to get weak, break down, and tell us what's really happening. And I am here to tell you that in my belief structure, never going to happen. The reason it will never happen is simply this. The powers that be, whoever in hell they are, okay, know something about this phenomenon that went all the way back to the end of World War II. World War II ended in 1945. The UFO topic blew up in 1947. Allegedly, at places like Roswell. A crash was retrieved, allegedly with bodies. The powers that be know something that apparently terrified them. Yes, you heard me correctly. Terrified them. And today, whatever this core secret is, and there is one there, trust me on that, it is surrounded by a special access program folder. And what that means, an SAP, is that you and I will never know what's behind that. Okay, very, very few people do. And as a result, we're going to continue on this freaking circus from now until who knows what. Now, one more thing before we go to our show. If everything is benign with this phenomenon, and by the way, I do not believe that is true, but for the sake of this discussion, if everything is benign, all right, the aliens, if in fact that's what they are, perhaps interdimensional, perhaps remnants from a long lost human civilization that abandoned the planet perhaps 10,000 years ago, around the time of the Younger Dryas event, the end of the Ice Age, massive flooding, etc., and later came back and for whatever reason decided to go underground. They could stop this immediately if they chose to. But there's no apparent evidence that that will ever happen, at least not in these days. So we're stuck here, and we're going to blather a little more about this. So with that being said, my two co-hosts, which by golly, they're faithful guys, are here every week. Mr. Mark Center and Mr. Gary Cassell are back. And hi, guys. Welcome back to the show. And our guest tonight, Manny. Manny, welcome back to Dark Matters Radio. And it's good to have you here, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on. There's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks with the hearings and some other issues surrounding the UFO subject and this closure movement and things like that. So I'm glad to come on and share some of that with you guys and offer some opinions and hear what you guys think.
All right. Before we get started, Mark or Gary, do you have anything you want to say ahead of time?
Nope. I'm just here to listen and absorb all the knowledge.
Okay. All right, Gary. How you feeling, by the way?
Good.
You were a little down there, I believe.
Yeah, it knocked me for a loop. Coming up on 3 weeks with this RSV, and I did better with the COVID than I did with the RSV. I survived off Robitussin. I told the guys a bottle and a half so far to keep me breathing and hacking. But today I didn't lose my voice at all. I'm starting to feel like I'm on the other side of it now.
Okay. Well, let's get started. Manny, you paid close attention to that last week. Tell me about your overview on what you observed.
So as far as the hearings go, I was honestly not surprised, but I was underwhelmed by what was discussed there. I felt like there was a lot of hype, especially around the social media circles, about how this was going to be a game-changing thing. People have been talking for years about getting Lue Elizondo in front of Congress to testify and swear under oath to what he knows. And there just wasn't a whole lot of meat on them bones. You know, it was like getting an order of hot wings. And
it's a repeat of what he did last time.
So in other words, you basically agree with my opening statements?
Yeah, I do. I agree. I don't think there was a lot there. And what was there was stuff that we've already heard before from other people like David Grush, in the previous hearings. And so now we're kind of hearing where maybe Grush got some of his information was from some of these players here. Yeah, and overwhelmingly, I think the biggest thing that was, kind of new or controversial, or at least had been released, was this Immaculate Constellation document that was released, and that was the name of the program that Michael Schellenberger had divulged in his reporting recently as supposedly being this reverse engineered program, UAP program that was stood up around the same time as Arrow, that was supposed to kind of circumnavigate Arrow. But there's some really interesting red flags around that document and the history of it, where it came from, who wrote the document, where did it come from, where did the information come from in there? Is this an official government document? So we'll kind of get into that. We'll talk about it because that was one of the big things that was released in the hearing. The rest of it, there was a lot of, their statements were real interesting by the different four witnesses. For people who don't know, we had obviously Lue Elizondo was there. We had Tim Gallaudet, who's a former Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy, worked for NOAA for a few years. He was one of the witnesses. Michael Schellenberger, who was a national security journalist for a number of years and has contacts on the Hill in that sphere, and recently has kind of shifted into UAP reporting as well. And then we had this character by the name of Mike Gold, who is a former NASA member, and one of the panelists who was in the public NASA hearings that were public NASA UAP panel that they stood up and was published recently, last year, I think that was. So he was one of those people who was working with NASA on their UAP program or investigations, which was not really a program per se, but really they're trying to figure out what kind of a program they need. So it's kind of the think tank to figure out what they can do to help Arrow and these other UAP agencies try to figure out what's going on with the phenomenon. And those are our four witnesses we had. And it's interesting, like you said, Don, in your intro, one of the most important aspects of this is the national security aspect as far as UAPs interacting with our nuclear weapons. And one of the people who was there in the gallery who stood in line to wait there to be there was Robert Salas. Robert Salas was there, but they didn't have him as a witness. And he's, as people don't know, is one of the people who, talks about that specifically, the Maelstrom UFO incident, where the big giant red UFO came over the base and interacted with the ICBMs and either engaged them and disengaged them, but in any case was able to interact with some of the Minuteman missiles that we had. He was there, and they didn't ask to speak with him, even though he's been dying to talk to him. And I know he's talked to Arrow, so I do find that kind of interesting that they'd rather talk to, Michael Schellenberger and Tim Gallaudet, who really have no UAP firsthand information whatsoever, but they've got a chance to talk to someone like Bob Salas, and they pass.
And that is exactly why I said it's horse shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a dog and pony show, right? They're just like leading us up there, and they're like UAP, and at the end of the day, they're going to ask for more money to set up another ATIP or OSAP office or something like that, or to coordinate with one of these nonprofit organizations that someone like Lue Elizondo sits on the board on or whatever, and work with them on this stuff. Like, that's what's going to happen, in my opinion. I don't think there's any real disclosure here. Coming from this group of people at all. I think this is all about money and no bid contracts on and bacon kind of.
Absolutely, because that's what I said the last time. It just seems like this is all about making money.
Yeah, that's
what you and I talked last time. If you remember, when he did that announcement, that was a pitch meeting. That's all that was.
Yeah, and you look at what some of the players are up to now, and they're all involved in the money aspects. The only one who hasn't been is kind of Dave Grush, who's taken a step back and withdrawn from everything. Nobody's heard from him in months, other than his lawsuit with the sheriff's office for improperly releasing, personal private health information about him, which I don't think they did, which is a nothing lawsuit in my opinion, but he hasn't been around. But his name's going to come up again because he was supposed to have written an op-ed that was supposed to be published in the Times, I think, the New York Times, and then for some reason it didn't get published. It got pushed back, and a lot of people are speculating that the bulk majority of what this Immaculate Constellation document was that was released at the hearing here is that was most of Dave Grush's op-ed, but just kind of repackaged by somebody else. And so we're going to get a lot of information out of that, and it is curious, and we'll get into that when we talk about it. But the hearings were real interesting. more so what wasn't said than what was, what wasn't talked about than what was. A lot of times these Congress people would ask direct yes or no questions. And I noticed there was more than one time where somebody like Elizondo wanted to get into his kind of double talk, IC, run you around in circles and get his words out there, what he wants to say on the record, but they wouldn't let him. They were like, yes or no. They kind of reined him in and were like, yes or no. And most of the time the answer was no. Most of the time, they would ask them, are you aware of a program like a hybrid, the government, working with genetic hybrids with aliens and humans? And they were just like, no, never heard of anything like that. They would ask them about reverse engineering at UAP programs. And they would say, well, yes, of course we know that those are true. Like we've talked about that before. If a Russian spy satellite crashes up in Alaska, you bet there's a program in place to go recover that thing and to disseminate it and try to reverse engineer it and figure out what their capabilities are. That doesn't mean it's flying saucer, little green men, crash retrievals, but it really is about foreign adversaries' technology, and we'd expect that. But these people they've blurred the lines over the last few years between UAP and UFO so much that when they're actually talking about a Russian spy satellite, they tell us they're talking about UFOs and little green men, and so there's this conflation between the two that is deliberately confusing the public, and that's why.
Do you think that's why they went to using UAP?
I do believe that was intentional. Yeah, that they definitely in the public sphere, and that's why even an article I read this morning about it says that was talking about the hearings says, there was UAP hearings, and then it says UAP are commonly known as UFOs, and they have to put that little caveat on everything,
right?
On everything nowadays. And then I'm thinking, no, it's not. When I say UFOs and I'm talking to you guys about UFOs, make no qualms. I'm talking about flying saucers and little green men. That's what I'm talking about when I say UFO. I'm not talking about a UAP. I'm not talking about an unmanned aerial system. I'm not talking about a drone. I'm not talking about a foreign spy satellite. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about conventional UFOs, and so I think that they've done that in order to confuse people. I think they've done that so they can do exactly what they're doing, which is get these people to pressure Congress about these programs to try to get these UAP programs in place. And then they hide these programs, and say that they're about UAP, or they tell us that they're about UFOs. But then when they get into Congress, it's not at all about that. It's about foreign adversaries, weapons, and things like that. It's
you brought that up last time because when we discussed ATIP, that ATIP wasn't about finding aliens or UFOs. It was about catching conventional craft that may belong to foreign adversaries.
It definitely should have been if they were doing what they were stood up to do, and OSAP to that same degree. Like OSAP, the predecessor of ATIP, the real one, the one that Lukatsky worked on, that had some ties to Skinwalker Ranch. On paper, they were supposed to be looking at what foreign adversaries were doing with technology 40 years out. It was kind of a think tank paper, which is something that you'd expect. But then off the record, what they were actually doing was completely different. They were actually stood up to kick back some money to Bob Bigelow to get him in place to receive the Kona Blue project, which was supposed to be UFO technology that some big company had, like Lockheed Martin, that was going to be relinquishing back to the DoD, and they were going to give it to Bigelow to reverse engineer and study, which didn't happen. None of that happened. I mean, Bigelow got the $22 million, and he used most of it to set up the facilities in Las Vegas to be secured and to house this stuff should it come his way, but it never came his way. The Kona Blue never got put through. So I don't know, man. It's really confusing, and to me, that just screams of fraud, waste, and abuse. Like when you tell Congress, "I need $22 million to do this," or you tell the DoD that, and they get it approved through Congress, and it gets into the budget, and then you take it and do something completely different. What is fraud, waste, and abuse if that's not it?
Let's not forget who the Politico was behind this, and that was Harry Reid, the former senior senator from Nevada. And once again, strictly coming from Don, okay, Harry Reid was one of the most corrupt politicos in the freaking Senate. All right. Nevada, the entire damn state is mostly bought and paid for with an extreme military presence there. So Reid, Bigelow, they were tight buds. And if you get right down to it, part of that outfit was George Knapp. Okay? Knapp, extremely tied in with all of those guys. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's what I call the Las Vegas connection. It's all those people are all tied in through Vegas. Bigelow, Knapp, and Harry Reid. They've all rubbed shoulders together. They've all have a long history together. So that's, I think, what you were seeing there. I think, and you're right. If you look at the OSAT project, it was a single bid contract. It was only on the bidding books. I think there was a 2-week window to bid on it. So even if another company like Lockheed Martin had wanted to, had known what it was, known to bid on it, they're probably not going to chase their, how far are they going to go after a single $22 million contract? They've got bigger fish to fry. So it seems like that was pretty much set up just to get money into Bigelow's hands, so he could use it to set up for Kona Blue. And we know it wasn't used actually on the Skinwalker site, because one of the former security guards there has said that. He said, who worked there during that time, who was hired by Bob Bigelow to work there. He's a former military guy, did some of the Janet Air security stuff in Vegas, and they hired him to go work security out at the ranch. And he said that, he's like, I don't know where all this money went. It wasn't spent on the ranch. He's like, they hardly paid us anything, and there wasn't much renovation or money sunk into the ranch while he was there. So it was being spent elsewhere. And some of those were those research papers.
In 2001, Stephen Greer had a disclosure thing at the press club, and he had a number of people come forward and say similar stories, but not under oath. So except for people being under oath, what's the difference between what Greer did and what we've been watching here?
In my opinion, it's not. There's not a lot of difference. In my opinion, a lot of what we're hearing today are people retelling stories that were told in that original hearing.
Well, there is one difference, Mark. And that difference is, on the record, there is now federal congressional interest into the topic. Okay.
Right.
It's now not, you're not, it's, well, shit. Let me get just a little political here. 2 weeks ago, if you were a MAGA guy wearing your hat, chances are somebody would have brained you with a club. Today, suddenly, after the election, everybody is wearing MAGA hats. Crazy, okay? Same with this business.
Well, right. I mean, it's they're under oath and all of that, but you have that admiral guy, and I watched the best of this. You've got the admiral guy, and he says, there's been debunkers out there who said the Go Fast video is nothing but a balloon, but we have dozens of more clips just like that. Oh, do you? Oh, do you?
Where are they?
Exactly. So he goes up there and says, you damn debunkers, we have so much more to show you. Uh-huh. Sure you do.
I don't even think he's seen that, if that exists. He's talking about like when somebody like Lue Elizondo tells him that there's a 17-minute Tic Tac video that's out there, the full 17 minutes of the mission is out there. And that's not, it's the old telephone game again. When your kid's in school and they're like, you tell a telephone game and just gets, every time it gets told, the story changes just a little bit, and that's what we're seeing here. And if the evidence is there, why isn't it being released? They can get it out there. I mean, when Sean Kirkpatrick was in charge of Arrow, he said something that really stood out to me, and he said, the best thing that could happen, in his opinion, was that he finds that some of this stuff is true and can release it to the world. That yes, they have evidence of extraterrestrial life and they can release it. And he's right about this, his name would go down in history books if he was the one who brought that out to the world. Even if it was his job and he was mandated to do it, his name would still be right there in the books. And so he had it seemed like he wanted to find it, and he just couldn't find it. These people, they all, his 40 witnesses that Dave Grush allegedly had, they went through and tried to verify all that, and that's a clip that we have that maybe we can play that clip, where they talk about that, about how they've investigated.
Is that one of the clips you brought?
It is, yeah. And so
Chanel, can you play that clip?
Let me get it queued up here real quick, and we'll see if we can just play that, since I've got a few. Let's see. see if I can remember how to do that here in StreamYards. Okay. Oh yeah, here we go. That's the clip right there. If we can-
ARO has expressed to the committee that, like any other federal government agency, it's faced challenges in its establishment, specifically in hiring staff to manage UAP historical records and coordinating with other federal agencies. While these agencies have been helpful to us in understanding the challenges that come from collecting UAP data, none of them have been able to substantiate the claims made at this hearing last year by David Grush. Despite our
That's the biggest thing right there. He's talking about all these different agencies that they have investigating it, and that not one of them has been able to substantiate the claims that were made by David Grush. And I believe he says in this clip, I'll let it play, but I believe he says either inside a skiff or out. That means even when they were in a secure, compartmentalized facility to talk about top secret stuff, nobody could provide them with evidence that's corroborated what David Grush was saying.
our committee members endlessly questioning these agencies inside and outside of a skiff. I hope our witnesses today will be able to provide evidence and content that is worthwhile to our pursuits of eliminating government waste and increasing transparency. To help alleviate some of the roadblocks, I'm supportive of measures that were included in last year's National Defense Authorization Act to increase transparency and improve record-keeping measures when it comes to UAPs. But I believe there's still more work to go. I co-led the Safe Airspace for Americans Act with Ranking Member Garcia, which requires the Federal Aviation Administration to develop procedures to collect UAP data from civilian aviators.
And then another thing he says there is that he's hoping that today's witnesses can provide evidence to corroborate some of what they're saying. And spoiler alert, they did not. They did not.
Let's put this into the mix here, because you know that Elon Musk is going to be heading up with, who was it? I forgot who his partner is going to be in that.
Vivek.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek. They're going to be going after agencies like this to make sure that they're not wasting taxpayer dollars. And I suspect that Elon Musk already has his sights on these motherfuckers. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not sure what that office is set up to do. It seems kind of redundant since we already have the GAO and the Inspector General's office. I mean,
it's not.
But they're not doing their job.
Not redundant because it's going to be outside of that, right?
Okay.
That's the same problem you have with trying to get to the truth of UFOs. They're doing it inside instead of outside. They're pulling these jerk-offs in who are inside as well, right? The Admiral's inside, Lue was inside, all of these folks were inside. When Schellenberger talked about that video, or as Jaime Maussan would say, video, when he talked about the video of the glowing thing over there in Egypt or wherever it was, and the Persian Gulf, and blah, 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 I thought of when they said that the witness saw it on a screen at, I forget the term, that the ASEP or SEPKey or something like that, but he saw it there. I don't know if you have people looking over your shoulder there, but in a similar fashion as the chandelier crappy photo, why wouldn't anybody take out their HD camera and shoot the thing while they're watching it and then get it out to the public?
Right.
Why wouldn't anybody do that if it's that amazing? Comes out of the water, flies around, says, "How are you doing?" and flies off. Come on.
Mm-hmm. In fact, that's exactly how the Tic Tac video got released to the public, was on the boat. So many, at that point, people were passing it around on their cell phones because somebody did exactly like you said and took a picture of it in the CIC.
Okay. Well, that's a perfect example. As a quick side note here, and we won't talk about this any more than this. Did Don and Jageri take a look at the of the footage I sent you from the space station?
I did.
Yeah.
And did you think that it's got some worth?
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly, I found it provocative.
Okay,
Right.
that's
because
all I
it
care about.
changes speed.
Yes, I found that provocative. But all you see is a tiny dot. Now,
Well, in the
Well, that's
Maybe
no
that's
different than what when you released that video back in early 90s.
Yeah, that's just a dot.
It's just a dot there too, and it's
I want
absolutely
to follow
compelling.
up on this. If Manny hasn't seen it, I can send him the clip. When we have another show on this, we hope to have maybe D'Antonio and some people look at this all together on Facebook and look at what we're seeing there, if it can be confirmed that it was actually shot and it isn't fake. Because everything's fake, right? But it certainly does look interesting. That's all I wanted to say, was if you guys found it at least interesting. So
Yes, I did.
good,
Mark.
good. So that's going to be a future show. We can have Manny back on. We can have the D'Antonio back on. Try to confirm or deny.
Well, I'm still waiting for Manny to send me my check.
Well,
As soon as I get a check. As soon as I get one, I can pay my subcontractors. You know? Yeah. It's funny you brought up the chandelier, though, Mark. That's something, I don't know if we could talk about that too. That's something that if people don't know, that Elizondo got busted kind of passing off this hokey video or photo of a UFO that ended up being a light chandelier reflection in a piece of glass. And
who found the GPS? Mick West. Mick West looked at it, found not only the GPS, but the apartment it was shot out of in like a couple of days' time.
Let me just very briefly break in here. I want to show this for the audience. Now, back in the day, when this thing first came out, made a hell of a splash. But like everything else in this field, time goes on. People forget. Today, most people probably have never even heard of it. But I want to put this out there, and I want to tell the audience members, if you have a genuine interest in this topic and you want the no bullshit story, okay? Forget all this other crap. This is the no bullshit. See if you can get yourself a copy of this book, Clear Intent, okay? The government cover-up of the UFO experience. The authors are Lawrence Fawcett, Fawcett, and Barry Greenwood, which basically, just like it sounds, Greenwood, Barry Greenwood. And I'll tell you what, this damn thing will send chills up and down your back. I am not joking about that. Okay. And I'm going to show this again before the show is over. So get ready.
Yeah, stop dragging your feet, Manny. Get your book. That's what you're getting after.
If was there anything that stood out as more provocative to Manny with the last congressional hearing? Like any kind of like, oh wow, they actually said something here that's actually a little provocative.
No, not really. I think, like I said earlier, like we touched on, the Immaculate Constellation part was pretty much the biggest thing to me. But there were some severe red flags that, like, I was kind of excited about that because they were expanding more upon where that information came from. But then when I saw the document and started reading it, like, it was just took all of the air out of my sail. Like, it was just like, oh, instant disappointment, you know. And we can get into that when we get into the Immaculate Constellation specifics about the document. There's a lot of kerfuffle around it, but that, other than that, no, I wasn't. I was shocked at how many times they would ask these people a question, and they just go down the line and say nope, you know, because that was kind of the overall vibe of the hearing. You know, it was Tim Gallaudet saying, oh, I was told it wasn't aliens or UAP, you know, inferring that he was being lied to. Elizondo saying, I can't tell you that, or he doesn't know. You know, Schellenberger just straight up saying he doesn't know because his information is real limited. And then this Mike Gold pretty much saying, you know, fund NASA, give NASA more money. You know, like that was the whole theme of the thing.
Well, here's the deal, okay, about who is on and who is not on what is known as the bigot list. Now, back in about 97, all right, all the usual suspects, Stephen Greer, Billy Cox, a very well-known UFO centric journalist, and his name just slipped my mind, who was the 12th man to set foot on the moon, okay? Astronaut.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. Mitchell. Okay.
Edgar Mitchell, yeah.
Edgar Mitchell. So they had an informal briefing with some senior Pentagon officers about the UFO topic. All right. And make a long story short, one of the people there was Admiral Thomas Wilson. Wilson at that time was the head of the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. And they convinced him to do a little research at the Pentagon to see what, if anything, he could find out. Well, somebody steered him toward one of the aerospace conglomerates out here on the West Coast. Now, I cannot prove this. I don't know this for definite sure, but I'm convinced it was Lockheed. At any rate, they told him that he should contact them to see if they would talk to him. Well, he did. Whoever this outfit was, he called them up. And they told him, we cannot discuss anything over an unsecured phone line. You'd have to be out here. So Wilson hopped on his airplane, flew out to the coast, met them. They took him into a skiff, okay, a secure place where they can discuss TS&C information. And when he got in there, the security guy, the head of security, basically said, well, Admiral, hang on a second. I've got to see if your name is on the bigot list. Now, what this is a list of people that have been vetted and authorized to see information that's secured by an SAP, a special access program binder. They pulled out the list, checked, his name was not there. Now, this is a guy that was head of the DIA, okay, one of the premier military intelligence services anywhere. And they said, sorry, have a nice flight back. Well, he went back to DC. By all accounts, he incidentally denies all of this. And by federal law and statute, he has to deny any of this happened, because an SAP, even acknowledging that you have information about a project or program, you're in violation of federal law. Okay. But he got back there, was furious, and was prepared to raise holy hell. And somebody pulled him aside and said, Admiral, you know, you're going to be retiring soon. You certainly don't want to put your pension in jeopardy, and the fact that you might get another star on your shoulder. Cool your jets. And he did. Now, how did all this come out? Well, one of the people that had been involved with our buddy Robert Bigelow at the ranch, okay, a physicist, a guy that a very good friend of mine who is a physicist told me This is the only man he's ever met who can be in a room by himself, and as you walk past, you hear a raging argument going on inside the room. Okay. This guy met with Wilson in Vegas. All right. Took copious notes. I am convinced, having been a criminal investigator and having a little, not a tape recorder, but a digital recorder, he recorded what this guy said. Okay. He put it down in a piece of paper. One of the people he gave it to was Edgar Mitchell. When Edgar Mitchell died, these documents surfaced. All right. Now, like I said, Wilson totally denied any of this. And then this physicist decided to go underground, refused to meet with anybody to discuss it. So I am convinced, because I know something about interviews, I know something about talking to people, under duress, etc. This was something that I have no doubt happened. So if the guy that's in charge of the DIA can't get any information about this topic, retrieved UFOs, biologics, etc., how the hell do any of us expect we'll ever get the real story? We won't.
So how many on this panel believe at least some of the
And by the way, that guy's name was Eric Davis.
Eric Davis. How many here believe at least some of the Bob Lazar story?
I do.
I believe it.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer of the Bob Lazar story.
So,
I was there at the beginning.
well, no, that's fine.
No,
Why?
I'm just saying. I was
Why?
there at the beginning.
What would be the problem with calling in somebody like Bob Lazar to a congressional hearing, a person who has purportedly firsthand knowledge and hands-on craft and other things? Why wouldn't they be calling in somebody like that?
That's a hell of a good question, Mark.
They seem to not have any interest
It's
in
a
calling
shockingly
in.
good question, Mark.
Oh, thanks. So it just seems interesting that if some of what he says is true, I have no clue. He's one of the only guys who came forward. And Don, do you think that a lot of what goes on at Area 51, be it alien or not, is covered in SAPs?
Oh, yeah.
Then why the hell could he come out and talk about it and nothing happened to him of any sort of consequence?
That's not exactly true. He did have some things happen to him, but he's still around. They didn't whack him. Nobody whacked him. Okay.
He's still talking.
They whacked
He's
his
still
Corvette,
making money off of it.
but they did whack his Corvette.
He's still making money off of it because he makes the drawings and he sells those. Not that that's a lot of money, but just seems interesting that if the SAPs are that critical, this guy is still out there telling his story. They're allowing him to tell his story, maybe because it's all fake. I don't know. But it just seems very interesting to me that he's probably the highest, the best known human on the planet with hands on the technology.
Right.
And it's like, what the hell is going on here? Bring this guy in. And you know as well as me, Don, he'd have nothing more to say because he really hasn't changed his story, right? So what would it add? What would it add to the congressional hearing to bring him in? Nothing. It had nothing. Isn't it interesting?
It's more talking with no evidence.
Yeah, and even before the hearings, I had that same question mark about why Bob Lazar wasn't the first guy to knock on Arrow's door and say, I'm a first-hand whistleblower. Here's all my information that I have. You guys can go track down these programs or whatever. I think it would have been a perfect time for him to get his story out there and to be validated and vindicated for his years of making his claims. And
Well,
yet
why
he
do you
has
think it
never
hasn't
tried
happened?
to contact them. Well, according
You
to
think
Bob,
it's
he's
on
just
them,
over
or
it.
is it on him?
Oh, Bob's made public statements about it, and he said that he's just he's over it when it's time to go to Congress or Arrow, but he's not over it when it's time to make a new documentary called Gravatar, or to go to the McMinnville UFO convention here in Southern Oregon, or to sign books or be featured in a film. So he's kind of, in my opinion, that was the final time where I was like, Bob's story to me just kind of has to go away. I mean, and I've gone over the years back and forth on my beliefs on the Bob Lazar story. I started out just believing everything that he said, and then I was like, no, none of it's true. And then I'm like, well, some of it's true. I've gone back and forth over the years as more information comes out about it. But I've rested on the side that I think it was all a bunch of hoopla. And a lot of what he said was in the public information already.
I knew Manny. I knew all those people pretty well. I knew John Lear. Boy, do I have some stories about John Lear.
Please don't.
I knew Lazar. I knew his buddy at the time. I don't know what their status is today, Gene Huff. I've been to Lazar's house several times, okay? And that can be a story in its own right when he was still living in Vegas. But I have a fairly refined bullshit detector, okay? And I did everything to see if I could catch this guy. And he was just straight and narrow. This was back in 89 and 90, okay? And he's never changed his story. And I've seen a lot of things that he's done, okay? He's never changed it substantially in any way. Now, I've always said about Bob Lazar, I kept him in my gray basket, okay? My gray basket primarily because of the controversy over his academic credentials. But I do know he was out at Los Alamos, all right? I do know, and this is something you may not know, but he claimed the person that got him involved with DG&G and ultimately going out to the site was the father of the hydrogen bomb, okay, who was down there giving a lecture, all right? The guy that designed the H-bomb, and he was sitting outside on a park bench reading a paper, and there was a picture of Lazar, his jet car. Okay, you've heard about his jet car.
Yeah, I've seen the newspaper article, or one of them, about his jet car, his rocket car.
Right. So as Lazar was walking by, he saw him. He said, oh my God. So he walked over and he said, oh, doctor. He said, by the way, that photo on the front page, that's my jet car. And they sat down and they started talking. And he supposedly, referred Lazar to the program, which would indicate that he knew about it. Well, that's a nice story. Okay, I wasn't there. I don't know. But here's something I do know. They were interviewing him. Okay, the scientists, they were interviewing him for something. And I saw the videotape. And while they're interviewing him, the interviewer said, oh, by the way, doctor, what if I ask you if you know Bob Lazar? What would you say? Now, this was before the interview, okay, but they had the camera running. And he turned to him and he said this. I would say nothing, nothing. And he just turned his head. That was it. Now, being a cop, I looked at that and I saw that, and that told me tons. Okay. So, once again, it's coming from me, second, third hand at best. All right. You can accept it or not, but I saw it. So,
well, that's
there
good
you go.
information. The problem with Bob Lazar's education is he could prove it himself, and he won't. He could go to those sites and he
Yeah.
could do a walkthrough. He
You're
could
right.
say, this teacher was here. This teacher was here. I had chicken on Tuesday. He won't do that. I call bullshit on that. He
Okay.
will not do it. Just like Waltz. Waltz, the guy who was going to be the vice president, he could have had that form done, that form that, about the military.
DD 214.
Right. He could have released that. He never did. It's the same
Right.
bullshit. Lazar could clear all of that shit up, Men in Black or not, and he refuses to do it.
Well, guys, we're at the top of the hour. We got to take our top of the hour break. I didn't even have to send a note to Chanel to ask her, but we're there. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with more tonight right here on Dark Matters Radio. Stick around. And we are back, and I got to out myself here. While I was talking about Lazar and that scientist, I blanked on his name. It was Edward Teller, okay, the guy that that created the H-bomb. I got so much crap in my head that got misplaced, but during the break, I remembered. So anyway, I wanted to
Teller's
tell
the one that was
everybody-
concerned about the atomic bomb burning up the atmosphere.
Yeah, well, whatever. But
I guess that's what what's his name said too, that made the A-bomb.
yeah,
Okay, let's go.
yeah. Let's see how big this firecracker really is. Okay. Hey, the Ruskies dropped one that was 50 megatons. Those crazy bastards. 50 megatons. Can you imagine that?
Yes,
That's a
it's
lot
at the
of
SAR.
hamburgers.
That's a big bomb. That's the biggest bomb ever dropped. I think the SAR bomb.
Yeah.
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 Hey, Don, is there, regarding the Lazar thing, and, it would be nice to, try to qualify his story and stuff through the congressional hearing. Is there anybody that pops into your head who you think, wow, it'd be interesting to bring somebody like that in as well? There's nobody else that popped into my head.
Well, Knapp tied in with all those guys. Knapp's the guy that broke the story originally.
No. I meant about the UFO, just a general character in the UFO universe who you could bring in to try to qualify some of this stuff if possible.
Oh, well, at the risk of sounding like I'm spouting my horn, I would be perfect for that, but they never have me.
Well, right,
I've
but
done that, but my mom used to spank me when I did it.
Yeah.
Right. So because of course,
I would give it to them flat out.
right,
And,
right. Because there isn't I can't really think of it's a very short list, because you can't bring in the talking heads like Musan and those guys because they're insane.
Mhm.
So it's a very, I would say that if McDonald was alive, he'd be my go-to guy. I'd say bring in McDonald, but he's dead.
I think the person I'd like to see drug in front of Congress works closely with Eric Davis, who you were talking about earlier, Don, would be Dr. Hal Puthoff. I think he has a lot of information about this, and I think a lot of these stories that we're hearing from Dave Grush.
Oh,
from Lue
dude, he
Elizondo
is
come
one
from him.
sketchy guy.
Oh yeah. That's why I would like to see him nailed down, put his hand on a Bible, and swear under oath that what he's going to say is the truth, and then grill him about some of these stories. Because I have a feeling a lot of this stuff that we're hearing nowadays is coming from him. through the telephone game, of course. I know that in Elizondo's book, he was referenced like between 40 and 50 times. He references Hal Puthoff and keeps, Hal told me this, Puthoff told me this, Dr. Puthoff told me that. There are some other ties he has to some of the research that was going on at Skinwalker Ranch during the OSAP days. Him and Kit Green were both involved with some of that stuff that was going on out there. In fact, the security guard who was working out there, they're using his MRI now. Gary Nolan has it, and when they show a MRI of a service member who was damaged by a UAP, they're using his MRI that was taken at Skinwalker Ranch. Kit Green picked this guy up at the hospital when he had his MRI done, and it was from damage he received at Skinwalker Ranch while he was working there. Not at all to do with the UAP, but something else that's on that property there, like a high frequency microwave antenna or something.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up. I don't know how this would work exactly, but you have Skinwalker, you have taxpayer money that's kind of attached to that, if you get my drift. I can't say that they spent the money there and stuff, but I don't know. There's some sort of a connection there, of course. And yet people have gotten sick out there. They're still out there.
Well, you guys are all aware of Travis Taylor.
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
That's his boyfriend. Yeah.
Now,
I love the guy as a physicist.
Yeah.
A few years ago, okay, I had a call from my physicist pal. You guys know who it is.
That's John Brandenburg.
And he said, Don, he said, do you know who Travis Taylor is? And I said, yeah, of course I do. As a matter of fact, I'd love to have him on my show. He said, you're not going to believe what happened. And I said, hey, man, I'm all ears. He said, well, he was out there at the ranch and he was looking at something and he was irradiated.
Yeah, it was the well.
And I said, what do you mean he was irradiated? He said, man, he got a massive dose of radiation. He said after that, he was urinating blood.
Sure he was.
Well, I'm just telling you what was told to me. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk to him about. But the guy ghosted me. So,
well, yeah. So a well-known person goes out to a site in Nevada, gets radiated, he's pissing blood, and the government, the state government of Nevada has nothing to say about it. Nothing to say about it. Health and welfare. Nothing. It's like, just bring more guys in here so they can get a swollen up brain and grow a third eye. What are you talking about?
Well, what did I say earlier in the show about Nevada? What did I say?
I believe you become, though, persona non grata with some of these people because you're off limits.
Of course he has. Mm-hmm. But that still doesn't make up for the bullshit stories that we continue to hear.
Yeah, like the hitchhiker
like they'll
effect.
Tell you something, they won't show you something.
Yeah. One of those stories is the hitchhiker about how something followed. I think it was Taylor home from Skinwalker Ranch, some spirit or ghost or something like that.
Right.
And and it affected his family or somebody else. And his response to it is not to call the CDC or any sort of health official. It's to start a band with Jay Stratton called the Hitchhikers. They're a garage band. So it's like, I don't know. Of course,
man. we've got the first book that Knapp had something to do with, and he was on the Joe Rogan show twice, and he contradicts himself when he says, is there any evidence? Oh, yeah, there's evidence, and it's talked about in my book. And Joe reads it and goes, there's no evidence in your book that's talked about. And the one that always blows everybody away is the giant wolf that they shoot, and a piece of it comes off, and then the wolf goes away. And, well, where's the piece? Where's the piece of the wolf? It's just like, well, why is that important?
Yeah. Physical evidence,
Well, when Colin Kellner and Knapp's book first came out in Skinwalker Ranch, my wife Vicki and I went over to Vegas, met with Knapp, had dinner with him. And I did everything except get down on my knees begging. Okay, for him to intercede with Bigelow, because Bigelow still had it.
Right.
All right. To go out there and spend several days. I wanted to go out there and just basically snoop around.
Check it out. Yeah.
And actually, I got to tell you, I'm glad now that Bigelow, for whatever reason, nixed that. Okay.
Why?
Well, I've heard too many stories, a little like this Travis Taylor story and others. But my point for mentioning this, so I called Knapp up because he had spent an inordinate amount of time out there. And I had heard some of these stories about something following people home. So I'm talking to George and I said, well, George, I said, hell, you've been out there a lot. You've been out there a long time. So let me ask you. Now, he was still married at the time. I said, did anything follow you home? And he got real quiet. And I just sat there and waited. And finally he said, yeah, it did. And I said, well, what are the details? He said, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, okay. So I respected that. I had no idea what might have transpired, but he did tell me that something followed him home.
So an investigative journalist has a amazing connection to that
First-hand
place.
experience.
And the investigative journalist is asked about that by another, I don't know, investigator, Don Ecker, and he goes, blow it out your ass. I'm not going to talk about it. F you.
No, that's not what he said. I could tell, Mark, that whatever it was, it had troubled him deeply. Okay. And hey, it's like if you were to ask me about my son, my deceased child.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
That's different, though, Don.
It's the same general thing.
It isn't. He's making a lot of his income off of that ranch. He's written books about it. He's in that new thing. I don't know. They probably go out there in the 6-parter that I haven't watched yet. He probably talks about that a lot. So he's making money off of that. And it's a whole story. And he's unwilling to not only share stories like that, granted, as emotional as it might be, not as emotional as to lose a kid, but he's making money off of it. And he's like, well, not only am I going to lie on the Joe Rogan show and say that there's physical evidence we talk about in my book, which there isn't, but he won't even talk about weird stuff, ghosty stuff that's happened to him. That's his choice. And I get your drift, Don. It's like, it must have been very upsetting. Okay, I get it, but you're in a different rarefied air here, George, than the rest of us. You've spent all of this time out there. Did you grow a third eye, George? Did you get sick? Right? Because he is the go-to guy as far as a journalist. There is nobody else but him.
Well, there's
very annoying.
Jeremy Corbell.
Yeah. Tell me, is anybody else here? Any of you guys watched that fucking documentary about Bizarre that he did?
Don's watched like 3 or 4 of them.
I thought I was stoned when I was watching it. I'm like, what the fuck is this about? It's just so trippy, and it's like, this isn't about Bob Lazar. It's some weird personal dream thing that he was doing. God, he's such a weird dude. I can't stand him.
I would say this about the clips I've seen. One of the biggest problems with ufology in general that I have is when they show internally lit blimps. When they show things that are obvious and completely debunked, and they put it in these shows, it's like, don't waste my time, George the investigator.
Let's dig into that, Mark. Let's dig into that, because you shared for me to watch and Don to watch Investigation Alien on Netflix. And I actually paid for Netflix. It's been years. I turned them off a long time ago. But I went ahead because I wanted to watch the Mike Tyson fight. Boy, that wasn't worth it at all. But, like, everybody's like going, are you going to watch the after fight? And I went, fuck no. Not with those announcers. Jesus Christ. Rosie Perez. Oh, my God. that's like self-waxing your own anus listening to her talk.
Nice.
Just horrible. Just a horrible idea. And but I got it. So I started watching, the show, and I am moving on to fifth episode. And I'm so annoyed with the show because they got Corbell in there again.
Well, of course.
Prominently at the beginning of episode 4, and the fucking jellyfish video. They show it like it's in the opening titles. It's oh my God, it's just so fucking bad, man.
Come on, Jagary, tell us what you really think.
I couldn't believe this, and I kept messaging Mark. I'm like, I'm having to fast forward because I cannot stand listening to Jeremy Corbell talk. It's like he's like listening to a stoner. It's like, oh my God. I hung with those guys in high school, and it just like endless, like word salad.
I was one of those guys.
You're running down a hallway. Remember that one?
Hey, Don. Now you won't tell me if you had one, but I'll ask you anyway. Do you have a what's it called? A dead switch? Is that what they called it? Like when if they come and kill you, this thing will be put out on the news and somebody will get it. Because that's what Corbell talked about. And if I'm not mistaken, the journalist said,
I got Vicky.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, and you can clear this up, Gary, because you probably saw it. When I saw the clip from their show, and I'm pretty sure the journalist said he's got one too.
Yeah.
And
George and Jeremy said they have them.
What did I say to you right after I saw that? I said, bullshit. Bullshit.
That's like holding this stuff back, right? Almost like a Hollywood producer that we know, Don, holding all of this stuff back, and you're not going to talk bad about anybody because shekels are to be made.
Right. And if they actually had that stuff, I think that telling the public and the world that they have it and that it's set to be released on a kill switch would be like the most asinine thing you could do, because you're just asking for some weird zealot person out there to say, I'm just going to go take them out to initiate this kill switch to force disclosure.
On top of that,
yeah.
What are they also admitting to? They're admitting that they're holding information back.
Right, that they're gatekeeping.
Which means they're lying.
Yeah.
The lie of omission.
Mm-hmm. Who's the one of the most popular guys on podcast in the subject who said this first? Stephen Greer.
Oh, fuck
Years ago, he said he had the same thing. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know. But if you watched any of he's got a new podcast on Vlad, V-L-A-D. He does a lot of, with the actors and stuff like that. 2 hours of this guy. I got through a half an hour of this guy, man. And it's like, boy, oh boy, that guy's a real tough watch, man, because he makes
why you have
many
to
unfounded claims.
2-time speed. Speed them up.
Well, right. But I've seen aliens. I've seen live aliens. I've seen dead aliens. I've seen this. I've seen that. And it's like the grift is strong in this one, Don.
Yeah, he and Corbell are clear-cut snake oil salesman, and that's all they are. And not Grush, but what's his name too? Lue Elizondo is absolutely. It's a grift. It's snake oil salesmen, and they are the biggest fucking liars. And I hope they get found out soon, because I'm getting tired of this. They're hurting ufology. These guys are doing damage.
Why would Mellon get involved in this? Because he's a guy who had a pretty clean name, from what I understand. I mean, why would he get involved with this?
That's a good question, and one I've tried to answer over the years, and I don't have an answer for it. You look at the beginning of 2016 in the Huffington Post, he did an article or an interview with Leslie Kean, and in that interview, he says, in all my years, working at the government, I never once saw one piece of evidence to show that there was a UFO cover-up, that the government had aliens or bodies.
So do you think it could be that the government handler said, "Here's our guy." Boom.
Maybe. I mean, I think that they convinced him. Somebody convinced him of something, that there was some kind of technology out there that would be in a greater national security interest if it were to be released. If they could force disclosure of the technology. And I don't. mean about UFOs or aliens, but I mean about man-made technology.
Right,
you know?
right.
And I think that's because that's the only thing I could wrap my head around. That guy's he's a national security guy. I mean, that's what he does. And what he's doing, he thinks is in the best interest of the security of our country. He doesn't strike me as a goofy, misguided believer or anything like that. He strikes me as somebody who knows what he's doing and is, working towards an end game. But I don't know, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe he got bamboozled by somebody. Maybe somebody convinced him that a lot of this stuff is real, and got him on board. Although I find that hard to believe how he did a complete 180 from the beginning of 2016 to the end of 2016 to where he's walking out of the Pentagon with videos that Elizondo handed him, and he's going to join Tom DeLonge and Hal Puthoff on stage to the Stars Academy and do all that stuff.
Was he?
Well, the question is you? Oh,
was he part of the first congressional thing?
No, not directly. I don't think so.
Right. So that's another one. So not only do you have Lazar who's out there, I get it, but why haven't they asked Mellon to go in there? Maybe because he is a plant.
No, I think he was actually scheduled to speak at this hearing, and he declined it because so this hearing was kind of weird because they kept saying it was going to happen, then they said it wasn't going to happen, and they kind of threw it together at the last minute. So it seemed really it seemed real disorganized, and he was scheduled to appear there. And he made a post on Twitter that said, I would love to come to this hearing and speak, but I have a previous engagement. And so that was the meme and the joke that was going around, was that he couldn't go because he had a family, vacation planned for Disneyland that was more important than disclosure. Whatever he had, I don't know what he would have that's more important than disclosure and a congressional appearance. Like whatever it is, that's got to be pretty damned important.
Right. Health or something. So except for the Solace guy, I'm not real good at in the Grush one, of course, I saw Knapp and I saw the guys behind, right? Since you're into this more, other than the Solace guy was there, but he wasn't invited up. Was there anybody back there who you saw who oh wow, that's Joe Blow?
Oh yeah, there was. Let's see. So in the front row, you had Jeremy Corbell. Two people down from him was James Fox. Then you had.
Wait, that was this time?
Yeah, Jim Fox was right there in the front row, I believe, or second row.
All right.
And in fact, he's in one of the pictures that I have that I can show you where he's sitting there next to Jeremy Corbell.
Okay.
Daniel Sheehan was there, as everybody knows who Danny Sheehan is.
Right.
Bob Salas was there.
I pissed him off a great deal.
Yeah.
So there's some arms with tats on it, and that's Corbell.
Yeah, and then right next to him is another guy who people are calling him Corbell's doppelganger because he kind of has the arms with the tats on it like him. I don't know who that was, somebody else. But he's right next to Corbell. I don't know that George Knapp was there, although he might have been. I didn't see him. Chris Bledsoe was there in the audience. And that's kind of interesting. Chris Bledsoe and Bob Salas, you can see them. This was kind of a media event. There was a lot of people from UFO Twitter who were there, just everyday people who were taking selfies in the hallway, who were shooting videos, And what was interesting, and this caused kind of a little bit of a kerfuffle too, was that one of the people who was there had been there since before sunup. He wanted to get he was first in line, one of the first people in line. And he was doing kind of 2-minute videos on Twitter from the event. He's like, oh, the sun's coming up. I'm sitting here waiting. I can't wait to get inside. And he was just kind of documenting his day. But what people noticed was none of these people who I just mentioned, some of these big name celebrity personalities, were not waiting in line. And it turned out that some of them had hired people to wait in line for them, and that's, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, God, this is their one thing, like Mark, you were saying earlier, like George Knapp, this is a lot of his money comes from this. Jeremy Corbell, 100% of his money comes from it. He's not out working a day job, as far as I know, doing anything else. A lot of these people aren't. There was a guy there by the name of Matthew Ford, who is a member of the UAP Disclosure Fund, along with Lue Elizondo, and who also has a podcast he's one of the most vocal Elizondo supporters out there who's constantly citing him as an unnamed source. Multiple sources tell me this, and everyone's like, "Oh God, here comes another, more Elizondo propaganda," as told to Matt Ford. But he's one of those people who hired somebody to wait in line for him. And these are, like these services who do that are fairly expensive, $60 some odd an hour to have somebody wait in line for you. And I was just disappointed that people who, this is their one job to do this, and they're going to hire someone to wait in line instead of waiting in line with people like Bob Salas and Chris Bledsoe, who did wait in line and talk to people. They should have been there. This is their event. This is their UAP hearing, what they've been fighting for. They should have been there, with us common folk and waited in line and took interviews and things like that, like some of the other people did. But they felt like they're above that because these people consider themselves UFO royalty. They consider themselves above waiting in line. It's more important to go to Starbucks and get a pumpkin spice latte and a croissant than it is to wait in line and do interviews with people, and that's infuriating. It's so infuriating. To me, it is if I would have gone to DC, I've been waiting in line with everyone. I've been talking to everyone and be like, "Oh, so what do you think is going to happen? What do you it would have been an event like a Comic-Con or something, I would have treated it like that. I definitely wouldn't have hired someone to wait in line for me so I could go get a coffee at the lobby.
So
that's ridiculous.
In the aftermath of the second hearing, and your Lue thing has been out there, have you gotten any new remarks, or has anybody contacted you, either known or unknown, because he's up there again, and then you have your documentary that's like a stick in the eye? Have you heard from anybody?
Yeah, in fact, right before the hearing, there was a group of people on social media that were attempting to contact some of these Congress people to let them know what type of character Elizondo is, specifically about him. And it's because, one, he didn't let people know until the very last minute that he was going to be at that hearing. I mean, there was I think 10 days notice that he was going to be there. Everybody else we kind of knew who was going to be there, or at least strongly suspected, but he wasn't officially known that he was going to be there until the last minute. And there was a group of people who were trying to contact all of the different people on the Congress people that were on the panel there to inform them of some of his behavior, either directly or indirectly, that he's been involved with, the questions around his credibility, for one, and that sort of thing. And so there was a grassroots movement to do that. I was actually surprised at the number of people that were supporting that and were trying to do it. So yeah, there is a group of people out there that are aware of what's going on. I think the problem is that he has created such a great echo chamber to where he can convince people who are isolated, like these politicians up on the Hill, that his version of the truth, which is a complete lie, is what's actually going on. That he's this social media darling, that there's just this group of haters out there that question him, that just hate him because they don't like what he has to say or whatever. And, he doesn't take any accountability for, supporting these groups of people that dox and harass people. He doesn't take any accountability for avoiding the people like Don, who will ask him hard questions, or hold him to task a little bit and not just let him run away unchecked and speak as his point of view.
One of the only times I heard him say yes was when Mace, who's attractive, right? She says, it's either yes or no. Have they recovered alien craft? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Have they, I forget what the second question was, maybe about the biologics or something like, yes. That was one of the only times, and it's like, that's very Grush, right? And I'm not going to bang on the guy. It's just when they ask direct questions like that and they get those direct answers, I don't know, man. It adds nothing to the conversation. It adds nothing.
Well, and what does that mean? Non-human biologics. I mean, we could be talking about the crashed Russian tests vehicle that had Lenka, the German Shepherd, in it. That could be a crashed UAP with non-human biologics right there.
They talked about that when he said something to the effect of life, and there is life without certain he got into the definition of life, and there are certain things for life that has to be met to be considered life, right? And he was digging down into this thing. I don't know. There's something about this guy.
Yeah.
There's something about him that's just
There's reason they use those, gray terms like non-human intelligence,
right,
non-human biologics. I mean, ChatGPT is a non-human intelligence. So any sort of device that came down that had some kind of AI on it, whether it was a DJI Mavic drone that has rudimentary AI on it, they could say that's a crashed UAP with non-human intelligence. There's a reason that they chose these nebulous terms and they use them, and that they don't just drill down and say, yes, I'm talking about an extraterrestrial, a alien being from another planet. We have it. There's a reason they don't say that.
Just say, rather than saying extraterrestrial, just say non-terrestrial.
Non-terrestrial, right.
Off planet. To me is the most diplomatic way of saying it if it's not human and not
Hey,
from
Don, there was a little pushback that I saw that a congressman or a senator or whatever asked him about the paperwork that he signed that keeps him from being able to talk about it. Okay. Now you signed one of those, and I don't know anything about this. And Lue said, where's that paperwork? And he said, it's in the government. It's in a skiff. I have no access to it. Yada, yada, yada. So with what you signed, would you be able to get a copy of whatever you signed to have your super secret clearance thing? Or is that something you sign and it just goes into the government to never be seen again?
Well, I never had a copy of it.
But could you get one?
I had a top secret crypto clearance.
Right.
Could I get a copy of it? I honestly, I don't know. I kind of doubt it.
Right.
But I saw and experienced things from my military service that were incommunicado forever, as far as I know.
Right.
Okay. So.
Right. Yeah, it did not surprise me when he said that, because it's like, well, why would they give you something like that? It's not your birth certificate.
Right.
So. Well, Mark, and the thing to keep in mind about what Elizondo was talking about, he said it was 3 years ago. So that would have been roughly, in the 2021 timeframe. And that was well past his government service time. I think he was volunteering as an advisor for Space Force at the time, but he also had an official contracting job working for the Department of Energy by way of a company called Consolidated Nuclear Safety at that point. So he may have had to sign a non-disclosure agreement for them. And that's right in Elizondo's wheelhouse to use something like that and to say, oh, well, I signed this NDA with Consolidated Nuclear Safety to not talk about anything that I witnessed on a nuclear facility site, because he was like he was a high-end executive security advisor for him that had to do with like weapons and something safety. So that makes sense. He would have to sign an NDA there and say anything I see here, I'm not going to talk about. We're talking about our nuclear, not necessarily nuclear weapons, but also nuclear generators and things like that. So it's all of our nuclear safety. But it would be right up his alley to BS even Congress and say, I can't tell you because I signed an NDA 3 years ago. Yes, that's true, but it has nothing to do with UFOs and aliens. Nothing to do with it. He instead of just saying, well, yeah, I have an NDA, but it's for something else and it doesn't apply here. He kind of makes it sound like it does, but leaves himself wiggle room to talk his way out of it later. And that's
so Mike Gold from NASA. He goes on this not a tirade, but he goes on this thing saying that they have, thousands of pictures and a lot of the video, and we could do an AI search thing to be able to search through all of their data to get this stuff out. Why would we believe anything anybody from NASA says about this? Why?
Well, we've heard that for years. Since 2001. We've heard about the Blue Room at NASA where they scrub photos, and
that's
hide
what
information. I mean. Yeah. So it's
and then
new.
When this guy up here, I'm pointing at you, Ecker, when this guy gets STS-48 and he pisses them off, then they scramble the feed. So we can't trust.
And that's why he's persona non grata, is because he pissed off the Pentagon.
Yeah.
When he did that.
I wouldn't trust anything that was said in an open hearing like that, especially devoid of any corroborating evidence, as just a general statement. Like, you can say whatever you want. And a lot of the disclosure activist supporters online are saying, well, obviously it's true. Otherwise they'd be charging them for perjury in front of Congress. No,
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 no.
no. It's not how it works. It's such a non-qualification. Like show me the evidence. As Jerry Maguire would say, show me the money. Show me the money. If it's there, show me the money.
It's so bad that you would throw Bannon in jail for not coming to Congress to speak, but then they don't throw the head of whatever that guy is. He's still there now because he didn't do it. And it's like, no, it doesn't work this way, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's just because somebody isn't prosecuted for something doesn't mean that they didn't do it. Prosecutions can definitely be politicized, especially when you're talking about either rich or powerful people. That's just kind of a given. So it's kind of a false equivalency to be.
What's the new documentary that what's that guy who was at he was in the Fox? What's the name of that new thing?
The program is the one that he's working on, which I'm calling The Phenomenon Part 2, which was really the 701 Part 3, whatever, like his original project that he was working on with Tracy Torme, and they had got a bunch of footage and stuff like that, and then it got shifted into this other project.
Well, he forced Tracy out.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that behind the scenes, and I'm not real happy with him.
Tracy was a friend of mine. Okay. I did a number of interviews with Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
And he came on my show and basically laid out where the bodies were buried. A day later, I got a call from an intermediary between Fox and me. And this guy said, well, is this true? Well, hey, I've been around the block a few thousand times, and I knew immediately he was calling on behest of Fox. So I said, look, you don't give a shit. James Fox asked you to call me, didn't he? Yeah. I said, well, God damn it, you tell James Fox that if he has a question to ask me, he calls me and asks me. I'm not doing any of this in between horse shit.
I'm not going to be on Don Ecker's show.
Well, he did. He called me. Fox called me.
All right.
And I laid it out. I said, look, Tracy and I, I could go into a lot of that.
Well, it's
the original 701. Okay, when Torme was still a part of it, brought me in for an interview. And of course that got left on the cutting room floor. But he was not happy. And basically Fox pushed Torme out when Torme was very ill. So I didn't like that. I thought that was a cheap shit thing to do. So,
that's shady. That's real shady.
Don, you mentioned, and I'm going to bring this up to ask Manny if he knows, if he's heard about this, but there's been a reoccurrence now of people, I think you said Peru or something, in the jungle in Brazil, and it's like a reoccurrence now where people are getting chased around, shot with light beams and all this. And I was wondering if you heard anything about that, Manny.
Just on that nap thing.
Yeah, not recently. I haven't heard anything about it. I think last year there was an occasion of that where they talked about a guy, like they found one body with it had like the face had been peeled off it or something like that. And there was witness statements of people flying around on like some kind of jetpack or something. Yeah. And, I think the local authorities had said something that they believed that there were cartel members that were doing things that were, there was some kind of cartel involvement there. They were investigating it, but I didn't hear that anything had come up of it. And I definitely didn't hear that there was a resurgence of it here recently. So I'd have to look into that.
Well, three or 4 years back in the late 80s, the very early 90s, I did almost 4 years of research in depth on human mutilations. And let me tell you what, I was in much of the UFO field persona non grata because I went down that path. But hey, I was a criminal investigator. I got handed this by John Keel, a very well-known author, a paranormal guy. And it intrigued me. Then, right where I was living at the time in Idaho, a hunter was discovered dead, mutilated, and his personal possessions, they later recovered, were about a mile from where the body was found. So that put me on the path. And there were a lot of people that were not happy about that. But the reason I mention this is because that happened much more frequently down there, okay, in South America. And a lot of that has never really been uncovered. And people like Bud Hopkins told me, he said, Don, he said, look, this is scary. People don't want to hear that. And I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, Bud. All right.
So
okay. He was,
if I'm not mistaken, in the George Knapp miniseries, they get into cattle mutilations and then people mutilations, and they never contacted Don Ecker about that, did they?
No.
No, and he was one of the first guys to even look into that unsavory aspect of this.
No, well, I investigated 2 cattle mutilations as a cop back in 81, 82. So, yeah. But hey, it's no big deal.
So, Manny, are you working on anything, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing some work with Bob Kiviat right now. We're working on one documentary, and it's not related to ufology at all. But there is coming up here in the near future will be what Bob's calling his UFOdyssey, which is kind of his life story, and you know.
Oh, cool.
And so we'll also touch on some of what's going on today too. So we're trying to wrap that all up into one documentary feature. But Bob's got some really cool stories, and he's like Don. He knows people from years and years ago, all over the place.
Did he tell you what he told me?
No, not specifically.
You know what got him into this, according to what he told me, and I don't know if this is true or not. You got to know Bob. I know Bob. But Bob said that it was UFO magazine that got him into this.
Oh yeah, I got him to move to California from New York originally.
Yeah.
When he was, back in the day. Yeah, which he's still in California. He's still down there at the beach. Yeah.
I was fascinated by this stuff too, but Bud Hawkins, you brought him up a minute ago, is why I got back into ufology. I mean, I believed in the ancient alien thing, but it was Bud Hawkins, when I read Missing Time, that I found that to be one of the most compelling books about abductions I'd ever read. And then UFO magazine.
Oh yeah, it's great. So I see that your buddy Stephen Cambion, he ain't gonna let Corey Good and those guys off. He keeps hammering those guys like twice a week, 90 minutes. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
he's just not gonna stop, and for good reason.
Yeah, I think what when Corey Good sent him threatened to sue him, I think that really just lit a fire under Stephen. He was like, really?
I bet.
I think Corey, if you're listening, you probably should have just let him go. You probably should have just left him alone, let him say his own things. Especially with the evidence that he has. He's just. And Stephen's great, man. He really digs down for some facts, and he tries to find the truth behind stuff and report on that. He got. Corey Good had accused him of swatting his house or something like that, and so he went and got the body cam footage from the officer who went to his house that day. And it was like it ended up being like an animal control person checking on his dog or something like that. And they knocked on his door and left a note, and then now here's Corey Good saying, oh, they swatted me. And you're thinking like, oh, they kicked down the door with M16s and shotguns and they had helicopters. And no, it was like 2 animal control people. And they're looking around at his house, and he's got like this log cabin style kind of mansion. And they're like, wow, this is a really nice place. So they're like, this is what happens when you talk about UFOs and aliens on the internet. You get to live like this, and it's like, well, some of us do. The rest of us don't necessarily, like the rest of us don't make that kind of money doing this type of thing, but he does, and he was complaining about his income coming down. Corey Good, he's like, oh my God, I'm only making $10,000 a month off this month. Like things, sales are down. I need to do a pledge drive or something. I'm like, good Lord, dude, like how much do you need, man? Like, come on.
Steve came on my radar when he endlessly played on the loop. I guess Good was sued, and he did a deposition, and they asked him straight up, "Have you ever been to space? No. Have you been to the Mars? No.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a super secret? Blah blah blah. No." And he just kept playing it on a loop, man, over and over again. And I said, "Wow."
Well, and then he had to admit it was all intellectual property he created. It was fabricated. It was It had no more reality to it than.
You mean there were no blue chickens?
Nope.
Damn.
You know what's messed up though is that people still buy his crap. He's still out there peddling. Him and David Wilcock, and I was conflating David Wilcock there a minute ago. For some reason, I always confuse those two.
Well,
I was talking about it was David Wilcock is the guy who's got the log cabin who's accused him of all this stuff.
No blue chickens. I'll be damned.
Yeah, it's just crazy how far people can go. There's another person, this Anjali character, who made her name in this field off of a completely fabricated story. And people had called her out for years and questioned it. Like I was one of the people who questioned Anjali. I was on a live stream with her once. I think maybe even been Stephen Campion's, and she was on there. And I was real polite. We had a great discussion. But at the end of the day, I had to say, Anjali, you're a very nice person. Personally, I think you're a nice person. However, I don't believe a word of your story. I'm sorry. I believe that you're completely fabricating what you're saying here. And now it's turned out that, yes, that's true. And she finally admitted this, 6 years later or whatever, but it was so quiet in her retraction. It was so quiet where she admitted that her story was completely garbage that nobody cared. Damage is done. She's already got her, shows on Gaia. She's already got her following on Twitter. She's already being asked to star in documentaries and things like that. And so it's like, it's hard, man. And I wish, I think, I don't know. We need more people like Stephen Campion in this field.
It's a lot of work, man. The problem is, though, and the yeoman's work that he does, if he was to do this for the rest of his life, it's really not going to matter because Dr. Jonathan Reed is still believed by more people than ever before. The Billy Meyer case, all of this stuff is still believed. The alien autopsy, there's no way to stop it. I mean, you can do the best work you can. Don did work on Cooper, and it's the number one book in jail to read. I mean, it's like, come on.
Yeah, it's hard to convince people they've been bamboozled too, and some people.
Well, it's ego. It's people's ego.
It's a mixture too of. Look, man, I talk about this with Marxism and leftists that it's a cult, and you're getting cultish behavior within the UFO community, and that's when you see people lashing out because you're attacking what they believe.
Did you ever hear of Heaven's Gate?
Yeah.
Just a little.
Yeah, and I've called out some of the cult-like behavior too over the years. That's something that I've been just strong to push onto people and say, look, if you can't question your leaders, if you're being forced into an echo chamber, if they're trying to get you to cancel people with opposing points of views and drive them away,
like the Democratic National Committee,
you might be in a cult. Yeah, and there's definitely we're seeing that.
Now I'll bring this up as a kind of an example of that with our buddy Kiviat. And I've talked to him a lot, and I'm not going to bash on him necessarily. But when it comes to something like the autopsy, I'm a firm believer, and I have nothing to base this on but my investigation that I've done on it since a year before it was released, that he knew more about that footage than he's ever said publicly. And part of the problem with James Fox, the alien autopsy, is they're positioning this stuff at the least as make up your own mind, and at the most there's something very, very odd that's going on here, and not really backing it up to my satisfaction, right? So with that autopsy, that is part of the problem, because I'm a firm believer that there were names, Spiros malaris, there were things that were known before they released that thing, but you choose to release it in a certain way to get people interested in it, right? But it also
Kivy
sours the waters.
Kivy had found out about that whole damn thing from me. I was in Europe.
Right. But I'm just saying
I was approached by your buddy, Phil Mantle.
Yeah.
Okay, who was priming the pump for that British lying son of a bitch, Ray Santilli. Okay, they had that thing in the works before, and they used the name Spielberg.
Yeah.
To whetten the appetite. And of course, who do you think of immediately? Steven Spielberg, right?
Of course, that's why it's said that way.
Volker Spielberg, who was a Kraut German pornographer. Okay, that's who was behind it.
Well,
the inventor of the money shot.
I'm just saying that my belief is that there was
what the hell am I still doing in this goddamn circle?
There was a lot more known about the footage and the players behind the footage, but because you're in Hollywood, you're a producer and things, you're going to put a bunch of money into this thing, and what are you going to blow it up? Well, of course you're not going to blow it up. You're going to release in the best way that you think you can this information. So I understand why Fox and Kiviat and these guys would do stuff like this, but it is part of the problem. It's not part of the disclosure solution. So it'd be interesting to see. And I've talked to Kiviat. He's a little difficult to talk to because he's a producer. It really would be interesting to actually have the truth about what went on in the background of that footage, and we're never gonna know. We are never gonna know.
Yeah, it's like the UFO core secret, surrounded by an SAP. You can put that in your rear view mirror, buddy.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but I am interested in the documentary that you guys are going to work on, because he's been involved in a lot of very cool stuff, not even the UFO, the ghosts and all that stuff. He's been involved in a lot of interesting stuff. If you put it together correctly, it could be kind of an energizing kind of a life story of somebody who was right into the middle of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and has been and has dealt with a lot of these people over the years, that we talk about. Bob's got working relationships with most of these people at some point, so he's got a lot of inside information, and he's got a really interesting story to tell. So
well, I hope it works for him. I can remember with Bob when he was still married to his former wife. There were some people that wanted to do one of those live, what the hell do you call them? TV shows where the camera crew films you from the time you get up. You go down, get your first cup of coffee.
Reality show.
Reality show, yeah.
Yeah.
Reality. Right.
Like the alien autopsy.
Right. Reality. Where they tape you for 2 weeks.
The thing that cracked me up about that was when they said that there was going to be, that there was real footage, that they just released the stuff that they remade in the apartment. And I'm like, that's just stupid. Nobody's going to fucking believe that.
Right. That's 1 or 2 frames are real actual frames, but the rest are recreations or something. And
if you talk to Santilli today, he'll tell you that he still has footage, but they're just, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, we're over it. Thank you. You made your money, your $6 million or whatever.
Oh, he made a hell of a lot more than that.
Well, So it'll be very interesting to see what Bob comes up with. I do know he knows a lot of behind the scenes stuff. My view of it is he's not gonna tell us. He just isn't gonna tell us for various reasons. We won't get into that now because you're gonna work with him. All power to you. It might work out great for you, but it'll be interesting on what he's going to say on camera. It'll be very interesting.
Well, guys, we're down to roughly 2 minutes before we've got to vacate the premises. So Anybody? Manny, do you got
Who's
any
Lue?
final
Who's Lue?
final
Go watch
word?
it.
Who's Lou?
I think we're gonna. I've given up some links for the original full hearing. If people want to go and listen to the 2.5 hour congressional hearing that was recently done, or if you just want the TLDR of it, it was no, we don't know anything. We don't know anything. Give NASA more money. There I just saved you 2.5 hours, but the link will be there. If people want to go and watch it. There will also be a link for the Immaculate Constellation document. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that too much. Bear in mind that document is essentially fan fiction. It's not an official government document, even though when Mesa's reading it into the record, she says it came from the Pentagon. It didn't. It was handed to her congressional aide in the hearing from Jeremy Corbell. It was never an official government document. It's basically fan fiction written by Corbell as told to him by David Grush and some other people. So bear in mind, it's not an official document, but it's there if people want to look at it. And the third link will be the Arrow report that came out the day after the hearing, which is the fiscal year 2024 report, where they essentially say the same thing. We've looked at X amount of cases. We have a bunch of cases. We can identify roughly a third of them. The other ones are still unidentified. We don't know what they are. However, to date, there's been no clear-cut evidence of ET or alien technology has been discovered. So that's the short version of all those, but the documents are there if people want to go.
They're on your website.
I've given them to the chat here, and I've posted them on Twitter. They're not on the website, no, but I do have links to them available if people want them. We'll try to get them in the description.
We're going to have Manny on again.
Yeah,
You got to come back
anytime.
It's
been great.
I mean, we haven't scared you off yet, Manny?
friends.
Nope,
We
not
haven't
yet.
scared you off?
Not yet. And it's great to bounce some of this stuff off you. And I love hearing, some stories, Mark and Don, and I just love hearing stuff, from other people and getting other opposing points of view too, because I kind of sit on some of this stuff and I don't really get a chance to talk about it with people other than like on Twitter and online. So it's nice to bounce it off
that's it for this week, guys. Remember, Thursday, UAP Crossfire on at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, KGRA DB. That's it for this week. And hey, we hope you have a great one.
God bless Sam and Dean Winchester.
Cubs
Yes,
win.
sir.
Cubs win.
Talk to you next time. That's it. Good night, folks.